Hi, and welcome to episode 11 of My Words, Our Journey, where we'll begin with chapter 37. The call came in at 1:30 a.m. Another body had been found. Kenny and Leonard met in the precinct parking lot at 1:50 and were on the scene shortly after 2 a.m. The chatter coming across the radio had intensified to a nonstop squawk of details. The body had been found naked and beaten with a note stuffed in the mouth. Clearly, the defender of children was back at work. Before they even arrived at the scene, Kenny and Leonard had been warned by two other team members that this murder had a different feel from the others. Even though they felt sure it was not a copycat murder, it was definitely different, they said. When the pair arrived, they saw exactly what the others had meant. In the previous cases, the bodies had been identifiable, but this particular body had been beaten and kicked so many times that it would be impossible for even a friend or family member to identify the body. The coloring, swelling, and overall mutilation was beyond anything Kenny or Leonard had ever seen. Kenny knelt down and took a closer look at the left foot of the victim. "Why leave one sock on?" Kenny asked. Then he answered his own question without waiting for his partner's reply. "It looks like it was left for a sign, or some sort of a message." Leonard remained standing, unable to take his eyes off the victim's oversized head. The vicious blows had caused the man's ears, eyes, and nose to swell, and the two deep wells on the crown of his head indicated that their man had come back angrier than before. Kenny gestured for the letter. The body was not going anywhere for a while, and the letter, he was told, was going to greatly interest him. It read, "Dear gentlemen, I know I will not be able to elude capture for very much longer. That is why I am becoming more selective about my prey. You will see what I mean when you do your research on this man you consider to be my victim. This man was free to talk to and make meetings with children in your city. For that I hold you partially responsible. Mr. Costco, I would bet the same evil is running rampant in the city where you reside, so you are not free from this blame. It should not be my place to have to deal with this. I have no choice, however, because no one else has taken up the cause. With a system full of self-absorbed judges and overworked cops, who will protect the children if not men like me? I would like to see the same financial resources allotted to protecting our youth as are being spent on the hunt for me. But as I said, I know you will find me soon enough, and I have come to peace with that. Mr. Royal, the remaining victims have already been selected. They were chosen for their past and present sins. For some reason unknown to me, it is important that you try to comprehend what I'm doing and the sacrifices I've made and will continue to make for the mission. There is evil everywhere, that is true. But if we can do one thing during our earthly lives that will be highly regarded in the afterlife, it should be protecting the young. Don't you agree, Leonard? Signed, the Defender of Children. P.S. I do not take pleasure in doing your job. I want it out, and none of you would help me. But now, it's too late. As Kenny finished reading the last part of the letter for the second time, he was startled by a tap on his shoulder. A young officer held out a vanilla envelope assigned to him. What now, he thought. Leonard stepped to his partner's left shoulder to see what the envelope contained. Neither could have guessed what was inside. A list of 38 email addresses and printed copies of correspondence from each and every one. Photos, presumably sent to children over the internet. Middle-aged men posing naked, smiling. It was too much for either to stomach. Leonard carefully placed everything back in the envelope and called for a tech to get it to the lab as quick as possible. "What do you make of this?" Kenny asked Leonard. Leonard thought one thing but said another. The guy is nuts and wants to be caught. What he thought was, this man wants us to become his partners. Chapter 38. Home at last, Myles walked into his house without bothering to turn on the lights. He maneuvered through the darkness to the dining room table where he laid his work papers, to the kitchen where he took a water bottle from the refrigerator, and to the den where he propped up in his recliner. It had been a busy night. After taking care of his latest victim, Jonathan Sweet, aka Dreamcatcher, Myles had made two stops before heading home. The first was to the bridge to toss the predator's belongings. The second was to his office at the carpet store to catch up on a few last-minute details. He did not want to let his work suffer any more than he had to. The owners had been good to him, and he wanted to leave them with things in order. He didn't really want to leave a mess. They had been so supportive when Amanda was killed, and he hated to think how they would take it when they heard the news of his capture or his death. He hoped they would understand. While sitting at his desk, he had signed 2 invoices for payment and collected 6 sticky notes with names and numbers of customers who were expecting return calls. One was waiting to hear if she'd been approved for credit. 2 had general pricing questions. The fourth had called to check on his special order and made it perfectly clear that if it wasn't in by the end of the week, the world was certainly going to end. Now, however, he pushed work back in the back of his mind and he tried to relax. The darkness felt good. In the darkness, he felt hidden from the anticipation of the events to come and the pressure that went along with it. Little by little, his body sank into the softness of the chair. He woke the next morning, completely refreshed, to find that he had slept peacefully through the night in that same chair. He wondered if his crime from the night before had made the news yet. Amy surprised Michael Hampton with a call and an invitation to dinner. Without hesitation, he accepted and made plans for them to meet at her favorite restaurant, Ryan's. She loved their salad bar. She knew it wasn't right to lead him on like this, but she needed someone who could provide the information she needed without drawing attention. So far, he had not questioned her motives for the questions she had asked or sudden attention, and for that, she was thankful. She had never been good at telling lies. On the ride home, she realized that he seemed content with just spending time with her. What a crazy concept, she thought. At the end of their date, she kissed him on the cheek and turned to walk back towards her car. Acting as if it was an afterthought, she turned back around and walked toward him and opened his car door. She approached him with a smile, then leaned in and whispered in his left ear, "Thanks for your help. You'll never know how much it means to me." She turned and walked back to her car, aware that his eyes were following her every step. That should do the trick, she thought. And it had. At 5:15 a.m., her phone began to vibrate with a new message. All it said was, "One white sock, left foot. Hope this helps. MLH." It was the message she had both hoped for and feared. To Michael, this was just a bit of information he had passed along to a would-be girlfriend. It was harmless, especially since she had promised not to print anything he told her in confidence, and she had meant it. But to Amy, the information confirmed that she indeed had a connection to whom the press had dubbed the CP killer. They weren't very creative with names. Now she would have to wait for his call and consider how to approach the situation based on her new insight. Amy reached for the small television that sat on an unbalanced table at the foot of her bed. She hit the power button and watched as Fox News appeared before her. Was he up and looking for the same story, or was he sleeping like a baby after his exploits? She wondered if he would act differently when he called back, for surely he knew he had her attention. Why wasn't he afraid of her calling the police? What was next, she thought. Shawn still had not heard from Earl by the time he had left his office, and was therefore feeling a bit low on the drive. But when he got home, he found Joe waiting for him, with plans that would surely lift his spirits. In the candlelight, he saw that she was wearing his favorite nightgown, short, low, and practically see-through. How did she always know when he needed her attention the most? "Just one sec, sweetie," he said before kissing her with a quick kiss and running to the other room. He sat down to his computer and was relieved to hear the ding that let him know that he had 3 new messages. The first 2 were forwarded from coworkers, probably crude jokes or racy pictures. Delete, delete. The third message was from his old friend. It provided all he hoped for, and he scribbled down the name, Leslie Myles Humphreys. Shawn forwarded the report to the 2 detectives in Virginia. He felt Jill's arm around his neck, her warm hands on his chest. Time to celebrate. Chapter 39. Leonard pondered the most recent tidbits of information they had received from Shawn. Interestingly, this faceless stranger from Richmond had made a connection to a local man named Leslie Myles Humphreys. According to the report, he went by Myles. I would too, Leonard thought. As Kenny reviewed the new information with 2 team members who had arrived late, Leonard walked to the back of the room for a little personal time and thought about what he had read. Shawn was someone he would want to meet soon. The man had done his research, followed up on his hunch, called the detectives in charge, and traced the car to the new owner. And he was not even on the case. A dealership in Maryland had confirmed that it had recently accepted a trade-in of a Chevy Impala identical to the one they were currently looking for. Oddly, though, the former owner of the vehicle was local to the New River Valley. So why drive more than 7 hours to trade in your Chevy, he thought. Furthermore, Shawn had suggested that Humphrey's new car might have been the one seen speeding away from a horrific accident on 81 the night he would have been traveling back from the dealership. While Leonard waited for Kenny to finish briefing the other two members, he fixed himself an ice water with lemon. So far, only two good things had come out of this mess: a few new friends, and an acquired taste for healthy water with lemon. Thanks, Kenny, he thought. Within an hour of receiving Shawn's information, the pair verified the suspect's address, plate number, and work information. Humphreys had not lied about anything to the car dealership. They also sent an unmarked car by his place to see if he was home. They received word back that the Pontiac G6 was in the driveway and the lights were on in the home. The team was split into two divisions. The first, led by Kenny, would try to find a judge who would grant them a search warrant for the suspect's home, grounds, computer, G6, and the traded-in Impala. The second division, led by Leonard, would discreetly talk to neighbors and present a photo of Humphreys to the known locations where computers had been used to make the dates. They would also search for a connection between Humphreys and any of the victims, including Brandon and Molly Flasker, and the two sexual offenders who, along with the Good Samaritan and the elderly couple with the fateful flat tire, had died on I-81 as a result of a severed brake line. Kenny had suggested earlier that they should ask Shawn to come down and help with the case, and in turn, he and Leonard had asked the district attorney to make the call, in hopes of eliciting the response they wanted from Shawn. Even if this particular lead did not pan out, this guy, out of nowhere, was thinking outside the box, and they could surely use his help. Kenny stole glances at his partner in the back of the room. He thought Leonard was looking more tired and beat down as each day passed. So far, the two had not done much to impress the brass or to further the case along to their satisfaction. And while he was not excited about the possibility of Johnny-come-lately breaking the case wide open, he was, however, ready for this case to be over, for the sake of everyone involved. Besides, he was ready to go home. Suddenly, Kenny had a revelation and bolted to the back of the room to join Leonard. "We need to make some calls, partner," Kenny said. "No one thought to bring in the witnesses from the murder at the park. They may be able to pick our guy out of a lineup." The timing was perfect as far as Leonard was concerned. He had just been cornered by a secretary from down the hall who had wandered in and was trying her best to make small talk. He slipped out of the corner and into the hallway almost before Kenny had finished his sentence. Kenny glanced back and smiled at the secretary Leonard had left behind. Kenny thought, she lost about 40 pounds, let her hair grow out, toned up a little bit, and toned down on the makeup. She wouldn't be that bad. Kenny smirked at Leonard. Fully aware what his partner was thinking, Leonard rolled his eyes. He knew Kenny's type. Chapter 40. Myles did not want to wait 1 minute longer. It was early, but he had already been awake for hours thinking of nothing but Amy, the one who would tell his story once he was unable to. He was first drawn to her because of her writing. Now it was because of his hope that Amy would take his notes and journals, his most intimate thoughts, hopes, and dreams, and convey them to the world exactly what he was trying to accomplish. He did not want to let her know right away how crucial she was to his purpose. Instead, he would use her intelligence and ambition to pull her in and make her want it more than him. "Hello," she said after the fifth ring. Myles trying to find the right words. Silence. "Hello, is there anyone there? I'm hanging up." Click. Just like that, she was gone. Myles shot up from his chair and paced around the room, glancing at the pictures of Amy he had downloaded from the internet. If she were to see his dining room, she'd probably be more than a little freaked out. He had pinned up printouts of her from as far back as her college paper reporting days to as recent as the award banquet held only a few months back. How dare she hang up on me, he thought. What was she trying to prove? Fully aware that she'd gotten under his skin, Myles redialed her number. She needs to know how this is going to work. For the past 5 minutes, Amy had been willing the phone to ring again. She knew it had been him. But since he showed up on her caller ID as private, there was no way to know for sure. Hanging up had been a reflex. She was not going to beg him to speak. Her strong will and quick temper had come from her grandmother, and she banged her head against the cabinet as she realized these traits may have cost her an extraordinary boost to her career. When the phone did ring again, it made her jump out of her skin. "Hello?" She tried to sound polite and sweet. "You and I both realize that you've been given a golden opportunity before you," Myles said. "I think we both also realize that there are others who would love to have this opportunity. Do we understand each other?" Without waiting for an answer, he went on. "We need to work on building a rapport. That is, if you're in. And when I mean in, I mean all the way in." He could feel her tenseness through the phone line. He pushed on. "Amy, are you the one I'm looking for? The one who will tell my story?" There was a pause. She responded, "I'm the one you want, or are you calling other reporters and dangling a carrot in front of them too?" She quickly determined that he was testing her and wanted to show him that she could be tough when she needed to be. Although the idea of an exclusive was hard to resist, the idea of being drawn into this so-called mission scared her beyond words. Her practical side had told her to hang up and call the police, but her ambitious side screamed at her to keep him on the line and go for the ride. "The carrot, as you call it, is my journals and notes. I would like to give them to you. All I ask in return is your vow to write my story in the same manner you've written your articles about the case. Let the people decide for themselves whether I am good or rather a monster." Amy was not comfortable with the situation she was in, and her finger had wandered twice toward the disconnect button. She paced around her apartment, stopped to look at herself in the mirror. Could she really get involved? Was it too late? Was she already too far in? Was she in danger? Had she already committed a crime? Amy and Myles exchanged nervous questions and answers until neither had anything else to say. Myles placed the track phone on the coffee table, convinced he had picked the right person for the job. Likewise, Amy faced an important realization about herself. She was not the opportunistic, win at all costs witch she had perceived herself to be. Instead, she was a compassionate woman who was going to help a tormented man explain to the country why he, and we as a society, need men like him. She wondered, was all murder created equal? That would be a great working title. She quickly grabbed a pen and jotted it in a small purple notebook that contained her notes for stories and novel ideas. Of course, catchy titles, too. Shawn did not like to fly and was in serious need of a distraction. His boss, Ron Shackler, had contacted him at home and told him to pack for at least 2 weeks away and head to the airport immediately. He knew he'd been loaned out, which was more than okay with him. However, something told him that Shackler did not share his enthusiasm. While there was nothing that his crew couldn't handle in his absence, Shawn knew his superior liked to follow the chain of command. It was somehow beneath him to have to deal with Shawn's subordinates. He was a character, to say the least. Shawn thought a deaf person could have detected the bitterness and utter disdain in his boss's voice as he gave Shawn the news. For a split second, he thought about what his work environment would be like when he returned. Would he be going back to a strange situation after the case was solved? But as quickly as the thought has seeped into his mind, it was gone, replaced by anticipation, eagerness, and of course, the dread of flying. Jill had been more excited about his involvement in the case than he had been, actually. She had started packing his bags before he even jumped in the shower. When he got out, he found the outfit she had placed at the foot of the bed, complete with underwear, socks, and the shoes she thought that he should wear. Cords and a button-down shirt would not have been his first choice in traveling attire, but there was no way he was going to wear anything else. The ensemble would definitely make a more positive impression than his threadbare Corona t-shirt, faded jeans, and his favorite tattered sneakers from college. Thank God for Jill. Chapter 41. The apartments were not what Myles had expected based on his first impression of the owner when she had walked into the store several weeks before. Nancy Lanford was well kept and a pleasant woman of 63. Myles took notice of her fancy manicure, expensive clothing, and jewelry, as well as her slightly used Mercedes, and thought he could count on making a huge sale for an upscale property. The recent divorcee had come into the store to buy carpet for her newly acquired apartment complex, explaining her second husband had left her for a much younger secretary and that she had made him pay through the nose. Myles was struck by how open she was about her life. He remembered wishing he could at least be half that open about himself. While strolling the aisles, Miss Linford had pointed to several styles she approved of for her complex. Each was top quality, and she had never asked for a price. "I think I want different carpet in each of the 3 apartments," she had said as she studied a burgundy Berber sample. Miles' heart sank. 3 apartments. After posing his client with few more questions, he had learned that her apartment complex consisted of only 3 modest attached apartments. Still, he plugged away and tried his best to do a good job for her. Now it was paying off, Miles thought as he sat outside the apartment building. He knew that the installation was scheduled for sometime the following week, which did not leave him much time to pull things together, but he knew he could make it work. He remembered her saying that she was going to Barbados, or was it Fiji? Either way, she had given him keys to the apartments, along with her permission to take care of anything that needed to be done before installation. From his parked car, he spotted 3 things that most definitely would need to be taken care of before following through with his mission. The building looked abandoned, and it was obvious no one lived there. First, Miles would throw up some window treatments. Second, he would fix the small mailboxes that were practically falling off posts they were mounted on. And third, he would paint over the spray-painted gang symbols on one of the front doors. All in all, he thought the place would serve his purpose, as long as there was no major surprises inside. Right now, though, he needed to find a local kid to mow that forest of a lawn. No respectful child molester would approach the buildings as they sat now. As if on cue, a kid rounded the corner on his bike. Miles estimated him to be about 14 years old enough to push a lawnmower. Decked out in a blonde wig, shoved under a baseball cap, and garbed in a satiny-style jumpsuit he had stuffed with a pillow, he stepped out of the car and summoned the boy over. Once they completed their transaction, the entrepreneurial teen continued his way down the street, and Miles let himself into the first apartment. The apartment was void of anything other than a few dead flies on a windowsill and a coat of fresh paint. He had forgotten one crucial detail. The apartments would be empty. Miles did not like the idea that the apartments would be empty when the predators arrived. But after about an hour of hashing out ideas in his head and then dismissing them for different reasons, the answer came to him, clear and rather simple. His trusty Louisville Slugger would make a comeback. And I think that'll be a good place for us to finish episode 11. Next week on episode 12, we'll see how Miles' plan comes together. We'll also see how Amy handles her new situation, and we'll check in on Shawn, Leonard, and Kenny and see how they get closer to catching the defender of children. Thank you for listening, and have a great day.